Portuguese state of India, Estado Português da India, also simply known as Portuguese India, was a colonial state of the Portuguese Empire within the Indian subcontinent. The first Europeans to come to India and the last ones to leave were Portuguese. The first Portuguese to land in India was Vasco da Gama in 1498. However, the period of Portuguese rule in India is said to be between 1505 to 1961. Portuguese colonialism outlived its English counterparts, but unlike them, had limited influence beyond the confines of their colonies. Let us see the timeline of Portuguese India. 1498, Vasco da Gama makes landfall at Calicut, where he is received by the Zamorins. 1503, first Portuguese fort is established at Cochin, now known as Kochi. 1505, second Portuguese fort at Cannor is built. 1509, a combined fleet of Egyptian, Arab and Zamorin fleet is destroyed by the Portuguese at the Battle of Diu. 1510, Goa is captured from the Bijapur Sultanate by Alfonso Albuquerque. 1530, Goa is declared as the capital of Portuguese India. 1535, Diu is completely subjugated. 1539, Portuguese Diu is under siege by a combined fleet of Ottomans, Mameluks of Egypt, the Gujarat Sultanate of Zamorin of Calicut. It ends in absolute victory for the Portuguese. 1559, Daman is captured by the Portuguese. 1596, in Southeast Asia, the Dutch established a monopoly in the spice trade after disloading the Portuguese. 1612, Surat is lost to the English. 1661, Bombay is handed over to the English. 1663, the Portuguese lose all their forts to the Dutch on the Malabar coast. 1779, acquisition of Dadra and Nagar Haveli. 1843, Panjim is made capital of Portuguese India. 1961, Portuguese lose their final colonial outpost of Goa when the Indian Army launches a military operation to liberate it. Early beginnings of Portuguese India. Portuguese colonialism began in earnest when Vasco da Gama reached Calicut on the Malabar coast on 20th May 1498. He met the Zamorin ruler of Calicut and, despite objections from Arab traders, obtained permission from the Zamorin to trade in Calicut. But Vasco da Gama was unable to pay the custom duties and price of his goods. When the duties were not paid, the Zamorin's officials detained some of Vasco da Gama's men. This angered him enough to kidnap some natives and fishermen by force. But as far as the Portuguese government in Lisbon was concerned, the expedition was successful. A sea route bypassing the Ottoman Empire was found, and the expedition had yielded a profit far beyond the initial investment. Further incursion of Portuguese colonialism. Further, conflict with the Zamorin kingdom and expeditions of Vasco da Gama established a base of operations on the Malabar coast. The first viceroy, Francisco de Almeida, established his headquarters in what would become modern-day Cochin. In 1509, Alfonso de Albuquerque became the second governor of the Portuguese possessions in the east. A Portuguese fleet under Marshal Fernando Contino arrives off the coast of Calicut. Their instructions were clear: destruction of the Zamorin. The city was reduced to rubble and the Zamorin's palace captured, but the local forces rallied and fell upon the invading Portuguese, causing them to retreat, the wounding Albuquerque. Albuquerque relented and entered into the treaty with Zamorin in 1513 to protect Portuguese interests in Malabar. With the aid of the Vijayanagar Empire, Alfonso de Albuquerque defeated the Bijapur Sultanate in 1510, establishing the permanent settlement of Goa. It would go on to become the headquarters of the Portuguese colonial possessions in India and seat the viceroy. Modern-day Mumbai was also part of colonial possession until it was given to the British in 1661. Goa was briefly occupied by the British from 1799 to 1813, during which the last vestiges of the Inquisition were wiped out. In 1843, the capital was shifted to Panjim, then renamed Nova Goa, when it officially became the administrative seat of Portuguese India. Portuguese control would only be restricted to Goa and the enclaves of Diu and Daman and Goa for the next century. Decline of Portuguese India. While most of India got its independence from the British, the Portuguese still held on its colonial outposts in India. On July 24, 1954, an organization called the United Front of Goans seized the Dara Nave, while Nagar Haveli was seized by Azad Gomantak Dal in August of that year. The decision by the International Court of Justice at The Hague to give access to Portuguese territories in India was rendered useless. Local protests against Portuguese rule in Goa were suppressed with brute force. Despite repeated requests from the Indian government to hand over its colonial holdings, the Portuguese government under dictator Salazar refused such a notion, claiming they were an integral part of Portuguese territory. Adopting a wait-and-watch tactic from 1951 to 1961, the Indian government highlighted the issue of decolonization before the international communities, while at the same time enforcing an economic embargo. It was in December 1961 when the Indian military launched an invasion of Goa. Against overwhelming odds, the Portuguese tried to put up a fight but were swiftly defeated by the Indian army. The governor of Portuguese India signed the instrument of surrender on 19 December 1961, liberating Goa after 450 years of Portuguese rule in India. India's sovereignty was not recognized by Salazar's government until its fall in the 1970s, from which point on the relationship between India and Portugal became amicable. Thank you.